Yellow tape around his
Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Lines with Gabe and Kev. This is week 17, your final review of the season. How you doing tonight, Kev?
I couldn't be any better. Champion, and it's been quite the journey. I've been honored to be on the podcast all season. To see good results here at the end is it's been quite the ride. What a 2023 season, and we just look forward to 2024 from here on. Eyes on the prize.
Quite an incredible year for you. I mean, losing in the semis last year, you end up finishing third place, which is what I finished this year. I found that out today. But we got to watch it happen live for you. We got to watch the ups, the downs, the wins, the losses, the brutal ones, and the super close ones that you pulled out. And it all brought you to 7-7 and securing a playoff spot. And then you've railed off 3 wins as an underdog 3 times. I mean, I guess in the last week you were projected more, but being the 7 seed versus the 1 seed, you'd expect Al to put up more of a fight. However, to cheers this and kick things off in the right direction, we'll do a split the G to start. So here we go. We're going off this G.
Yeah, you're gonna have to represent me on it. I don't have any Guinnesses here, but I got faith you're gonna pull it off.
Wait, let me set this down. Where are we? It's tough.
It's tough to see.
I'm just gonna hold it up as level as I can.
Looks pretty good to me, man.
I mean, for an angled G in what we're doing,
Yeah, that's good. It's perfect for.
I'm gonna give that a dub. I'm gonna give that a dub. But either way, we'll dive in here as always. And unfortunately, I didn't really have a matchup for me to be first, so we don't get to do that this time. But we're looking at the championship game here. It's your matchup. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Championship game, 129-95. Blue Medical Tent versus Paul Allen, the 7 seed, the 1 seed. All came down to this here in the end. Tension was high. I got a huge start from Brees on Thursday. I was super nervous on Thursday, but after that start from Brees, I felt honestly really confident in the entire game. I just figured, if Brees gives me a huge game like that, I got faith in the rest of my boys to show up and at least have a respectable game. 129 is not a huge game, but this week was honestly kind of a worse week for fantasy. There weren't too many teams that had great scoring and a lot of championships. A lot of injuries throughout the league this week, and just overall lower scoring games. But a huge game from Brees highlights my team. I got a nice game from Dak on Saturday, 22. Not nothing crazy, obviously, but nothing bad. And then the rest of my guys, pretty much, a couple touchdowns from a few key guys. Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp scored, which helped. Then Rashee Rice had that nice game on Sunday as well. And then just rounding me off with 10 points each, and Justin Jefferson, Trey McBride, and Mike Evans, giving me the 129, which it's enough to get the job done. For Al's team, his entire team, with one exception, underperforms. 6 of his 8 guys go single digits here. He gets 11 from Bijan, and then a huge 46-point game from Lamar. Fortunately, for me, I obviously saw what Lamar was doing, but it didn't really worry me too much because I saw that none of his other guys were really doing anything. And then it came down pretty much to T. Higgins versus it was Rashee and Jefferson in the end, and I was like up by 5. So he needed a huge game from T, who ended up getting kind of banged up. Came back in, but didn't make a catch when he came back in, and I ended up taking it pretty handedly. Al's magic kind of ran out here in the final week of the season. He'd had some good luck at certain times, and then some huge games at certain times, and they always just kind of came at different times to give him a ton of wins. But at this time, I put up plenty here, and his team falls on its face, and it ends up being a victory for BMT.
Yeah, I mean, you covered it really well. It was kind of the tenet that we spoke to all season and we preached about. It's consistency across the board. Yeah, you may have one guy who's whatever position rank 1 at his position, and if he's performing excellent, that's great. But if you don't have the supporting cast around him, you're not going to get the job done. And as you look at your team, you're right. You really had only one guy overperform. Everybody else performed within 2.5 points of projection. Besides Breece Hall, he gave you 12 points over projection, and that was enough to seal the dub, really. Obviously, Al's team exploded in the wrong way. Everybody in single digits aside from Bijan and Lamar Jackson, obviously. And, Al talked about he had some guys on his bench go insane too, but realistically, you're never starting Brandon Cooks, Tyler Algier, or Justice Hill over anybody on his roster. And we spoke to it a couple of times. I mean, obviously his roster looked a lot different, but we said that Al's team was built around the boom or bust. And generally, I mean, they were busting early and then they started booming in the second half of the season. And he made a lot of roster decisions and really solidified that up. So I wouldn't say that he is a boom or bust roster anymore, but we kind of see that recur with a couple of guys that were on the team that are still on the team. I mean, AJ Brown, George Kittle, and Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry, yeah.
Those
that was the big one I wanted to highlight too, because Al survived week 15 with a really poor week, and Derrick Henry was kind of at the helm in the Houston matchup. I kind of talked about how Houston, like last season, he destroyed Houston both times, and I think in his career he's destroyed them both times each year. But then this year in week 15, he completely got shut down by them, and then this week, same situation. So very, very different than what we've seen from Derrick Henry against Houston in the past, and just didn't work out for Al.
No, it didn't. And I mean, obviously, historical splits and things like that is not really something that a rookie is probably going to be looking at. Yeah. Something more that you'll start to check on in your second year, maybe your third year, really. Same thing with playoff matchups. A lot of the guys I noticed this year, specifically Eli, when he was building his playoff roster, was not too concerned with who the matchups were. And that is something that you have to factor in. Speaking of Eli and me, our matchup here, the race for third place, I did win, and it doesn't help. It doesn't change draft stock at all, but it's purely for pride. I win by 11 points at the end. And really, if Al wants to talk about a bench exploding, look at my bench. Jaden Reed, 27 points. Devontae Adams, 38 points. Wan'Dale Robinson, 20 points. Khalil Herbert, 20 points. Insane games from those guys. I got the dub anyway. And I mean, there were some start sit decisions. Eli can attest. I heavily debated starting Devontae Adams over Devontae Smith, and then I also debated starting Jaden Reed over Michael Pittman because coming off the concussion, I didn't know how involved he was going to be in the offense, and it's clear that he wasn't heavily involved. Didn't really matter. Obviously, this is just a game for pride, but Eli's team didn't perform well. DeAndre Swift struggling, Jahmyr Gibbs 5 points, and then Demario Douglas with only 7. 111 is a score we talk about. It's decent, but it's not going to get it done when you're in the playoffs. So,
Kind of noticing something with the Eagles. They scored 31 points against Arizona, but Swift stunk. Devontae Smith stunk.
AJ
AJ
Brown
stunk. Dallas Goedert was decent. Where did their offense go? I didn't watch
Jalen
that
Hurts.
game. Was it just him running the ball every time?
Pretty sure. And like they had some weird supporting cast. What's his name? Zacchaeus, whatever his name is.
Oh, Julio Jones caught 2 touchdowns, I know.
Yeah.
And then Olamide Zacchaeus,
Yeah.
2 ex-Falcons. That's actually kind of funny.
But either way,
I'd forgotten about the Julio Jones touchdowns.
moving on to the last matchup that mattered, I'll let you start us off.
Yeah, Poop Bowl ends up being an absolute blowout of a game. We got one team that lived up to the expectations of the Poop Bowl. Charlie loses it here, 72-120. Noah finally gets the win.
And we said it was coming. We said it was coming all
Yeah.
3 weeks. We thought that Noah would get his place. He had a good team.
He had a better team. He didn't really deserve to be here. It's very unfortunate for Charlie that he had to face Noah's team in the Poop Bowl. It puts up a 120, which is a fine, absolutely fine score. But to be
Should have
fair,
been Charlie
Charlie,
Sam.
yeah, Charlie should have also beaten Tal last week.
Yeah.
He had his opportunity.
He lost twice in a row though, in the practice round and the real round.
Yeah, he couldn't get rid of Tal and pays the price for it. But Noah gets a huge game from Kyron Williams, and he gets solid games from Joe Mixon, DK, and Chris Godwin, and then no guys, one guy in the single digits, and Travis Kelce, which is also kind of bizarre. But as I had said in the past, for these people playoffs, typically if you just get 1 or 2 stars to show up and get you a lot of points, it's going to be enough to win you the game, which it does here. It pays off.
Charlie had none.
Charlie gets 19 from Josh Allen as his high scorer, which was his projected. It's still kind of a down week for Josh Allen. It wouldn't have mattered. There was nothing that was going to save him.
Tough Patriots D though.
Yes, true. It was a bad
We talked
matchup.
about that last week.
Yeah, it is a tough matchup for sure. But Austin Eckler ends up being a huge disappointment this season. That was kind of a huge problem for Charlie. He should have traded him a long time ago. We can talk more about that later. But all of his stars and Saquon, Eckler, and then I guess you'd call D-Hop kind of a star. I don't know if I would though. But his running back duo was kind of the star power, plus Josh Allen, and no one
26
really
on the year.
Yeah, he's still D-Hop though.
Yeah.
But yeah, none of this guys showed up, and I think this team was definitely worthy of losing the Poop Bowl. I'm not very shocked. This was one of my favorites coming in, and I can't say I'm shocked that Charlie lost this year.
Yeah, I mean, there were some rumblings that have happened in the group chat specifically about my influence on Charlie's team last year, and perhaps that maybe too much advice was being given at times. But I did want to increase the competitiveness and keep everybody engaged. So my intentions were pure, and I don't think that it was, a result of me not helping him so much as it was a result of Charlie not trying. I think this will hopefully be a slap in the face and will wake him up, similar to how it woke Eli up last year. Going from 12th place to 4th place is nothing to shy away from. I mean, great turnaround from Eli, and we'll hope that Charlie can do the same thing.
Yeah, and I think when you lose the Poop Bowl, it's kind of just like the embarrassment takes a toll. It's like I do not want to be back in this position again. So, we saw it with Henry as well. They had a bad season last year and took it a lot more seriously this season. So, and you could tell the results, the completely different results for the season.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and it was great from those guys to see that. And we can hope that Charlie does the same thing. Unfortunately, he does now have to prepare for the punishment. As you all know, it is the beer mile. Charlie will have to drink a beer before he starts running and then drink a beer in between each lap while running a mile. We're going to host that at an undisclosed time. Henry has suggested that we do it day of draft beforehand.
Yeah, I'm going to come down for the draft this season, and I would definitely like to be there. So if we're able to do that, that would be my vote. Of
Okay.
course, it depends on Charlie's availability.
Yeah, I think Charlie said he's open for whatever. We spoke about this at a New Year's party recently, while everyone was there, or at least I think about half the league. Um, I do know that I believe Sam and Alex both live in Atlanta as well. Bennett lives in Chattanooga now. Congrats to him. New apartment. I heard
Nice.
so. Um, hopefully Bennett can come down too, and we'll figure out places for everyone to stay. But I think that that's a fine deal. We would just plan on doing the draft Saturday night and then doing all of the punishment Saturday morning, and you could fly down on a Friday.
Yeah, that would be good with me.
Sounds perfect. But moving on, we just wanted to take a look here at the final standings. I guess I could actually just pull these up on the fantasy thing. I don't know why I emailed these pictures to myself.
I mean, you got it pulled up already. It's fine.
But either way, we can move in to our awards talk. I mean, I think it's time that we address everyone and discuss how their team went. Obviously, we don't really need to talk about injuries or any talking points because the season is over and we've covered our matchups. So let's dive in. I mean, Al's team. I think it's apropos. He
Or
deserves.
should we just go 1 through 12
Yeah, we can do that.
based on what's on the screen here?
Yeah, that's fair. So
I'll let you do mine. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and I'll let you do mine when we get to mine. I think that you deserve the Diamond Hands Award. You traded for Jettas in week 4. He got injured in week 5 and only put up like 5 points, and he did not play again until week 14. But you held on to him that whole time, even declining multiple trade offers from me, multiple attempts to buy him at the deadline. And I think it was a significant reason that you won. Obviously, your opponents didn't score above 100 in the playoffs. And I think some could argue that you walked into it, but you scored good points every time. You can't say you didn't deserve it. Jettas in that period of the playoffs scored 15, 26, and 10, so nothing to shy about. And the 10 points in the last week didn't really matter anyway. You were already well ahead of Al. So I think that Diamond Hands is appropriate for you. And then the only other, there were 2 others that I thought for you. Brees Hall Ball Gobbler, because you started Brees Hall in 16 out of 17 weeks, and the only week that you did not was Brees Hall's bye. Now he did finish at running back 4, so you can't say
he's the boy.
You can't say that you were crazy for doing that. However, looking at his scores specifically, you wouldn't think that this is a running back 4.
Oh, dude, he talk about a boom bust player, man. Brees Hall.
I mean, this
he was rough to have some weeks.
I was doing my research, and I mean, look, week 1, 15.7, week 2 and 3, 0.9, 3.7, 9.9, and then 28, 20, 21. And then he kind of tapers off 10, 10, 18, 11, 10, boom, 26, 2.8 in the playoffs.
In the playoffs.
So, yeah, like, and then 43 and then 27. And so he was a huge reason why you were able to go out there and get the wins that you did. And I didn't do enough D&D to figure out if he was crucial in some of your losses, but I just got to call you the Brees Hall Ball Gobbler. I don't like him as a player, and I don't like him as a fantasy player. And he's on my avoid list if possible. However, the last award that I think you deserve is the White Man Omen. And now I'll give a little bit of explanation for this while I go back to your week 1. But you drafted 3 white players: Joe Burrow, Cooper Kupp, and Mark Andrews. All 3 men served stints on the IR or had season-ending injuries.
Yeah, I mean, Burrow and Andrews were on that same game, and then Kupp obviously missed time. He was right after we drafted a little bit early, and then even before the season started, he was hurt. So
out for the first 4 weeks.
Yeah, and then he also battled with some injuries in the middle of the season. That's another guy that I also kind of diamond hands was Cooper Kupp. Everyone knows
he was bad though. He finished at wide receiver 36.
Yes, yeah. I mean, especially missing a lot of time. Yeah, he was disappointing. He had a couple of nice games for me, but yeah, definitely a pretty disappointing season from him. And then Burrow kind of sucked too, even before he was hurt. Andrews was the only one of those 3 that was actually solid.
Yeah, but
while he was playing.
Something to think about for your draft position next year. Are you going to continue to take these white injury prone guys, or maybe you're cursing them. You might need to avoid them, and it might be something for the other managers to think about when making trades next year. But
Or stay away from them.
beyond that, we can go back and take a look at position number 2. Obviously, we have Al's awards. You want to take these?
Yeah, I'll give Al his awards. First one being Rookie of the Year. Not really, obviously, too many people in the running for this one, but it's well deserved. He was 11-3 in the regular season, secured the first seed and the bye, and then also made it to a championship in his first season. So congratulations to Al. Pretty remarkable that this was his first season. He put together, quite the team. He had quite the season, and did a lot better than some people have done. And showing up in the playoffs his first season, getting the bye, getting to the championship, and having a hell of a season, finishing second. And then also to go with that, the Black Magic Award, 8-game win streak. During that stretch, opponents scored higher than 106 points one time in that 8-game stretch, which is absolutely insane. And actually, too, the streak was broken by Sam, and only 102 points. So even on the loss, it was still a pretty low scoring game. But still shout out to Al. He got the job done in the regular season, especially, and then also got a win in the postseason. So congratulations to Al for the Rookie of the Year award.
Yeah, he showed up, and he definitely is getting a contract extension at least through next season. There have been some accusations of fraud going on, seeing as though Al had the least points against at only 1,400. However, I may not be in that boat because, like I said, I think Al put together a pretty good team. I'm just putting out what I hear. Okay.
Part of that too. I know his points for was fourth, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes points against his is kind of an exception because it is super low, but sometimes your points against is a lot lower when your team is good. Because no one's scoring the points on you. But 8 weeks in a row at less than 106 is really quite crazy. I highly doubt we see something like that again. So, at least you got to enjoy it while it was happening. Because I
Yeah,
doubt
and
it's going to happen again.
I think an 8
Uh,
game win streak is going to be the longest for a long time. That's more than half
yeah,
the season.
that is something worth noting. 8-game win streak is very exceptional. So shout out to Al for that because like you said, it's probably gonna be there for a while. But down to you. I'll do yours. The Slim Reaper Sleeper. This year you get the Plague Award, the Curse of Kevin. This was my award last year. All my players were getting hurt. Anyone that I traded would get
Just
hurt on
look at
someone else's
this.
team. Yeah, Gabe's team on week 1, 4 IR stints from the starters as well as an IR on the bottom, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4 season-ending injuries at some point in time throughout the season. Obviously, Nick Chubb was early on, and
Yeah,
then so was Mike. So was Mike Williams.
It was
Kirk
Nick
Cousins,
Chubb week 2, Mike Williams week 3, Kirk
there you go.
Cousins week like 11, and then TJ week like 12 or 13.
TJ was in the
Oh, no, that
playoffs.
was in the playoffs. Yeah, that was in the playoffs.
Yeah, that was just last week. That was week 16.
Yeah.
But sometimes it happens like that. Someone's got to get the Plague Award every year, and this year it just unfortunately happened to be you. And that's just how it goes. That's fantasy football. But congratulations on the 8 total IR. There you go. I've never seen this one before. 8 total IR. We had Netflix and Hill and me also had 7 IR stints and 6 from Paul Allen. I don't know who Al's 6 IR guys were, but I always thought his
mostly bench guys.
Okay, fair enough.
I scrolled through when I saw that because I was like, man, I guess I didn't have that many injuries. And 6 out of 8 were guys that were starting on my team at one point, and Al's was like 1 out of 6.
Yeah, that's the killer is losing like star players at that. Nick Chubb and a QB
and not only because it kills you for the week that you're in, because that player most likely doesn't score a lot of points before they get injured, but it kills you long term, especially when they pile up.
Absolutely. But to kind of go with the Plague, this is something that I also had last year. You got Move Maker, which is the most trades in the league at 10, third most free agent acquisitions at 23. No shock there. This just kind of goes hand in hand with the Plague. And then Closer Award, finished the second half of the regular season 6-1, but finally falling to Al in the playoffs as a result of the Black Magic. But started off the season a little bit slower, dealing with some of those big key injuries, and then end up having a great second half of the regular season, getting really hot going into the playoffs. and then also getting a win in the first round of the playoffs before finally falling to Al in the semifinals.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a great season for me. I can't be too upset. I have to be happy, that I'm here again in the top three. Obviously, I wanted to be in that championship game and at least have back-to-back second place finishes. Al dusted me with the last bit of his black magic, though, and it wasn't enough to contain your team in the end. Um, and that's really it. I mean, I did have a good season. You can say that I got lucky at some points. I if you're looking at it purely off points for, points against, I do have a negative 11 point differential. So you can say I skidded by and made it in at 9-5, but I won round one of the playoffs and I won when it counted. I mean, I tied for third best record in the league and then I finished third place. So, and being projected 10th place after the draft, I got to say I can be happy with how my team overperformed.
Yep, sure.
Moving forward, though, looking at Eli's team, I gave him the Build Back Better award. He lost the Poop Bowl last year, went 6-8. He finished the 2023 season at 9-5, lost to me in the race for third place, so he got fourth. But he really put together a great roster. I mean, he was ahead in points for by nearly 70. And he really did a good job. I mean, obviously, you can say some of that was Tyreek Hill falling to him at 10th in the draft, but I think that he built a good roster. Otherwise, he made good trades here and there. He had good depth to start Brock Purdy. I mean, he originally drafted Daniel Jones, but having Brock Purdy to throw in there and Brock Purdy finishing at quarterback 6 is something great for a guy who was drafted in the later rounds, at least round 7 or later. Going off of that, I gave him the Draft Steal Award. He did draft Tyreek Hill at pick 10, like I said, and Tyreek Hill never fell out of the top 3 at his position rank. He finished at wide receiver 2 overall. He got passed in week 17. He was wide receiver 1 pretty much all year.
And he missed a game as well there at the end.
Yeah, he
week
did
15.
He finished as the 7th overall fantasy player, and obviously he missed a week and didn't play well in that last week, and averaged 23.7 points a game. So drafting somebody like that at position rank 10 is pretty crazy. Congrats to him for getting that steal, and he's just got to hope he can get somebody else like that next year.
Yeah, I also think the Jahmyr Gibbs move was a really good one on Eli. I don't remember the exact trade, but that was a nice trade that he made on a rookie who was starting to break out and got him in a good time. So,
I mean, we
shout out
have
to
plenty of time. We can take a look at what the last transaction was. Devontae Adams and Christian Watson.
that's not the same trade, is it?
I think so. Traded from Easton Stick, traded Christian Watson, traded Devontae Adams. Devontae
Well,
Adams and Christian Watson for Ja.
oh, okay. No, he
Oh
traded
no,
he traded Devontae Adams
Devontae Adams for
to Noah.
Watson and Ja.
Is that what it is? I'm kind of
Yeah.
confused.
Yeah. Netflix and Hill traded Devontae Adams 2, and then Easton Stick Legacy Game traded 2. Traded.
Okay. That's a good trade. I mean,
Yeah.
that's Ja for Devontae Adams, basically. And
Yeah, Christian Watson got injured and never played, but Eli also used Christian Watson as a trade piece later in the season to Al.
yeah, so really good bounce back season from Eli. Not something to go unnoticed. He was 6-8 last year in the regular season. Ended up getting really kind of unlucky in the
Lost the
Super Bowl
play-in game.
playoffs. Yeah, lost the playing game, was a part of that. So he was either the 8 or the 9 seed, then ended up falling, losing all 3 games in the playoffs. But that's how it goes sometimes. But he does a good job this year bouncing back and winning a playoff game this year. So shout out to Eli. But let's move on to Wyatt in the Scary Terry's Big Toe organization. Our other rookie finishes the season at 8-6 or 8-6 and finishes in 5th place. Our award for him is the Roller Coaster Award. He started the season 4-1, then he went 1-5 through his next 6 weeks, and then finished at 3-1 in the final 4 weeks to narrowly secure a playoff spot. Ended up losing in the first round of the playoffs.
To me.
Yes, to you, but to put together a solid season, you can see here, just very streaky team. So, and something else to be noticed in the games that he was losing, it wasn't like he was it wasn't like his opponents were scoring a ton of points, which is something that can happen. All of his losses, he gets 88, 113, 94, 101. And then all of a sudden he goes back up to 162, 131, 149. So, he got a huge spark from some of his guys down the stretch and at the beginning of the season. But pretty solid season from Wyatt. First year out, they finished as the fifth seed, or yeah, the fifth seed,
He
and
did win the race for fifth place.
yes, and also won the race for fifth place. So, he averaged 122. He was our second highest scorer overall for points. So shout out to Wyatt. He had a very good year, just not a super consistent season, which is ended up being maybe kind of his downfall in the end. He didn't get a huge game in week one of the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean he mentioned it himself. He made some mistakes as a first year player making some or first year manager making some drafts. Specifically picking up a couple of guys who are really hit or miss. Gabe Davis is one of those. And then the haul that he got from Alex in order to go from 1 to 2, he has admitted that he could have taken better advantage of the guys he got at those picks. I think 2 of them ended up being total duds and like playing no time or starting and really not doing much for him. But unfortunately, that's the way the cookie crumbles, and he's just going to have to practice, and I mean, not practice, but prepare better for next season. Finishing fifth place as a rookie is nothing to shy away from, though, especially now knowing that we had both of our rookies finishing in the top 5 this season.
Yeah, not something to go unnoticed. Shout out to both those guys.
Yeah.
And you only kind of imagine that they'll get better at it with more experience. So
Yeah, and you gotta hope so. Next off, we have Bennett, and he wins the Stack Reacher Award. He drafted Travis Kelce at pick 106 and Mahomes at 207. They only combined for 40 plus points 3 times, and they combined for less than 30 points 7 times. They finished at quarterback 7 and tight end 2, respectively. And it really hurt him. He spent his first and second round pick to solidify 2 positions that, all in all, generally don't have a huge impact, especially when the rest of the quarterbacks were going. I think Josh Allen was maybe round 2, but everybody else was round 3 or later. And guys like Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen finished above Patrick Mahomes.
I think Mahomes is actually like QB8. There's a lot of guys that end up finishing above him. Yeah, this ends up being, kind of the thing that last season was huge for him. Not only this stack, but just drafting so many solid guys. But absolutely reaching for Kelce and Mahomes this season. And it ends up, kind of costing him in the end. He obviously made the playoffs and had a good season, but they didn't live up to the hype, and ended up being, the problem for him there in the end. But shout out to Bennett for being in the playoffs again as the reigning champion. No more, but was the reigning champion for the season, and ended up falling short this season, but still strung together a solid team.
Definitely strung together a solid team, and I mean that was really the only slight or thing that I could think of. Bennett's team was up and down here and there. He did end up making the playoffs, but he lost in the first round. And now we'll move on to somebody else who lost in the first round. Henry, you want to take those awards?
Yep, the guys with a good attitude. I know Henry had the most points scored in the regular season, so we gave him the Comeback Player of the Year award. It was between him and Eli for this award, but we ended up giving the nod to Henry just because of the regular season that he put together. I know Eli lost the Poop Bowl, but he lost it to Henry, who had a 4-10 regular season record last season. He was voted worst manager of the year last year, and he ends up finishing 9-4 this season. No, sorry, 10-4.
9-5.
9-5 this season. Yeah, there it is, right in front of my face. 9-5 this season with the most points scored in the league. So really turned it around. We made a lot of mistakes last season. Didn't have a good team at all. Then this year came out and put on quite the showing. We also went with him the wrong place, wrong time. Lost 3 starters in week 14. So he had to start 3 bench players around one of the playoffs. Ends up being his demise, falling to BMT in the first round of the playoffs kind of as a result of that. But, we had the best overall team in the regular season, just, some bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. Couldn't get it done in the postseason, losing Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen, Josh Jacobs. And Jamar Chase was also out that week too. think. I could be wrong
Yeah,
though.
but then he came back the next week. So that's what I was saying. He lost
Yeah,
those 3 guys for the following week.
yeah. So but shout out to Henry. He had a great comeback this season, and I know he'll be ready to go next season with some vengeance, gain some confidence for sure going forward.
Yeah, he definitely did. I mean, the amount of research he put in to improve his team, it went a long way, obviously. And he was in the number 1 seed for a long time until Al's Black Magic took it away from him. Um, Moving on to our next player, though, we have the waiver wizard, Alex. I gave him Roller Coaster XL. He started out the season 0-5. He went 6-1 in his next 7 games to push himself well into the playoff race, and then went 0-2 in the final 2 weeks to miss the playoffs. It was an unfortunate and extremely crazy ride to watch. We talked about it weekly on the podcast while he was having his crazy run, and while he was having his bad run at the beginning. But unfortunately, he just missed out on 2 key games there at the end. I think one against me, and he missed the playoff, unfortunately, because of that.
Yeah. This was crazy. Going from 0-5 to being in the playoff hunt is pretty absurd for sure.
Yeah, and the other award that I gave him because I felt that it was fitting is the Lions Glazer. He started 2+ Lions players 11 out of the 14 weeks. Not always Jared Goff too. He's obviously subbed in what's his name? CJ Stroud in a lot of weeks there. And interestingly, he started 3+ Lions players 5 times. So he really went with the Lions this year, and I mean it helped him in the later half of the season, you could say. But to start off the year, it was pretty rough.
Yeah, and at least it got him out in the Poop Bowl playoffs. That ended up being his saving grace.
It
So,
did.
there's ups and downs of that. But like we've talked about consistency, and when one team shits the bed and you have 3 other players, it can hurt you.
Yeah.
But we'll move on to Sam here, GM of the year candidate. He's not going to win GM of the year. Um, but he did have the longest L streak, 10 games, league record. This is probably going to be the record for quite some time, I imagine. No defense, most points scored against. Obviously, this is, nothing you can do about this. Very unlucky. But 1864, the second most is 1655. Opponents scored over 130 points 9 times in the regular season. So that's just straight bad luck for Sam. But at the same time, the no offense scored less than 105 points 9 times in the regular season. So really just a double whammy. Absolutely brutal. His difference between points for per game at 102 and his points against per game at 133 is a negative 31 point difference, which also made him the Poop Bowl favorite. Despite going 2-12, he's and securing a Poop Bowl bye. He ends up winning the first game in round 2 of the Poop Bowl, beating Noah and dodging a punishment. So shout out to Sam for at least avoiding the worst of it. Obviously his season had been over for quite some time, so at least being able to avoid the Poop Bowl is something to be happy about for Sam, considering how bad this team was and
Yeah,
how unlucky he was.
yeah, escaping the poop bowl for Sam is something to relish in for him. I mean, 2-12 is horrible, and then looking at the points for, points against total, over a 400 negative point differential is just astronomically bad. He rode with a lot of Falcons players this year, riding with Bijan, Kyle Pitts, and the quarterback for a while, right?
He had Ritter for a week or two.
Yeah. He had Ritter in there. It was just a sight to see while he was on the 10 streak. And unfortunately, he bested Al's Black Magic in week 11, and that recharged Al and allowed him to push through, get the 1 seed, and beat me in the playoffs just to run out to you in the end. But looking at our next player here, we have Noah. I gave him the bad beat award. He lost in or actually, you gave him the bad beat award. He lost in week 13 by 1.6 points. He lost a playoff spot as a result. He ended up making a Poop Bowl championship appearance instead. We actually talked about Noah's team, and I think in week 13, week 14, we started to talk about he wasn't really a favorite to make the playoffs, but we thought if he made the Poop Bowl playoffs, he would easily be out of there with a win. Unfortunately, he loses 2 bad games, the play-in, and then round 2 to Sam, and finally best Charlie, who only put up 70 points in the Poop Bowl championship. And then we also gave him quarterback syndrome. He started the lower scoring quarterback 6 times. Really unfortunate for him, kind of just a brutal thing to watch each week. We talked about it on the podcast on end, and he said it multiple times, he's drafting a quarterback round 1 or round 2 at the latest. So
Yeah, this was a Sam Howell, Trevor Lawrence thing. And to go back to that week 13 situation, if he had started the correct QB, he would have won and would have saved his season. He would have made the playoffs and would have actually outed me, and I would not be the champion today. So shout out Noah for helping me out. But we're running out of time here, so I'm going to move on to Charlie here for our last two. We gave him one award, the Washed Allen Award. Who else, despite having the overall best fantasy player, still managed to lose the Poop Bowl because he refused to trade Josh Allen, Austin Eckler, refused to trade these guys earlier in the season to improve the weaker parts of his team. There were certain weeks where Josh Allen was accounted for over a third of his total points. So really a huge reliance on Josh Allen ends up biting him in the end, and he loses the Poop Bowl. So punishment inbound for Charlie.
yeah, and it'll be fun to watch. Obviously, we're trying to do it on draft day now, but looking at Tal's team, he wins, of course, the worst manager award. He broke the league all-time low score, 48.56, which was previously 59.7 set by Alex last year. He scored less than 105 points 10 times in the regular season, less than 90 points 7 times. He went 1-8 to end the season, including a 7-game losing streak, weeks 18 through 14. So really just a horrible season for Tal. Made some bad trades, and he escaped by beating Charlie in round 2, and he just has to hope that he can bounce back next year.
Yeah, gonna need a bigger season next year from now, but at least he avoids the Poop Bowl. So, but that's all we got for today. We're out of time. It's been a pleasure of a season, gentlemen. It's been a hell of a season, and I look forward to it next year. Gabe, it's been an honor doing the pod with you. It's been a blast.